Hello Pokemon World! Mark Wilson here, and today is the first top 10 of my channel. And what a better place to start than with my top 10 favourite Pokemon from the Kanto region. Number 10. Kabutops. So this might be relatively controversial, which I guess is a good start, but let me explain. I never experienced Twitch Plays Pokemon, so the Helix fossil doesn't really resonate with me. I've never actually used Kabutops because it's such a late game aspect, but simply by its design, I just think it's fantastic. And I like it so much more than Almost That. I mean, the Pokedex entries always sound so terrifying and super badass. So I plan to use it in my Virtual Console run through the yellow version, but that's why Kabutops is number 10. Number 9. Machamp. There was a time when this might have been one of the Hitmons, but in truth, I'm not the biggest fan of the fighting type. So why is Machamp in my top 10? Well, part of it comes from the original starter pack for the TCG, where I got a Holo Machamp. But more recently, this is because I continued playing a playthrough of Pokemon Platinum that I hadn't actually played since 2014. And it turns out that I missed a whole lot of Gen 4 Pokemon, but somehow managed to get a Machamp on my team. And he was key to me beating the game. I also think he deserves a Mega, and I have an idea for that, but I'll get to that in a future video. I just think Machamp has a really cool design and more recent actual use, and that's why he's my number 9. Number 8. Zapdos. More recently, I tried to avoid having mythical or legendary Pokemon in my general favourites, but as you'll find with 60% of this list, most of my favourites come from the most recent playthrough I did of Leaf Green. Zapdos is probably the best electric type in Gen 1. It has such a solid design and its origins come through brilliantly. It used to be a tie between Moltres and Zapdos, but the Thunderbird just proved too important and shot Moltres down, and that's why it's number 8. Number 7. Poliwhirl. Poliwhirl is probably the biggest surprise on this list, because I've always been of the opinion that you should evolve your Pokemon to the end. But as I wanted to use some Pokemon I'd never used before in that Leaf Green playthrough, I had to figure out a plan of action. That plan will come up in a future video, but once I started using Poliwhirl, I began to love it as a Pokemon. The design is simple yet effective, and it really grew on me, which is why it climbed into 7th place. Number 6. Ninetales. For me, I never needed to use Vulpix or Growlithe, because I always chose Charmander. So when the opportunity presented itself to use Vulpix, I took it. Now the entire line has always been a favourite, as I think it captures the essence of Pokemon and would be one of my examples if I ever needed to explain Pokemon to someone. I also love its Alolan form, but the original always have a special place for me, and that's why it's number 6. Number 5. Venusaur. Remember in the last place I said I always chose Charmander? Well, as far back as I can remember, that was the case. But as I was about to start my Leaf Green playthrough, I seemed to just trigger a memory of a birthday cake my mum had made for me. But this cake had a Bulbasaur on it. Now, it's not the hardest design, but it's definitely not the easiest, so there must have been some time when Charmander wasn't my go-to. Anyway, fast forward to this past year, and Venusaur has muscled its way into my top 5. Number 4. Aerodactyl. The second fossil Pokemon on this list has always been a favourite. Ever since the Attack of the Prehistoric Pokemon anime episode, Aerodactyl has proven why it has never needed an evolution. Mega Evolution being temporary, I'm not counting it, even though that's pretty cool too. It's another Pokemon that I think epitomises the concept of the franchise, and looks super awesome. With its design seemingly a mix of dragon and pterosaur, what more do you need to invoke that childlike wonderment? And that's why Aerodactyl is number 4. Number 3. Charizard. I've mentioned it a few times, and in all honesty, it shouldn't be a surprise. There was a reason I forgot about my Bulbasaur cake, and this guy was it. I don't really know what else to add to the conversation when it comes to Charizard. I think its design is fantastic. I love both the Megas, but I don't like that it got 2. It just seems to me that that's a bit too much love, considering there are other Pokemon that don't even have 1 Mega. But all in all, I think Charizard is a fantastic Pokemon. Number 2. Tauros. Now, this might be a shock to everyone, but it could have been so much more shocking. Up until my Leaf Green playthrough, Tauros was my favourite Kanto Pokemon. It's amazing how things stick with you from when you were a kid, but this one did, and the reason has nothing to do with stats, which I know very little about. Very little to do with the design, which is grand, if a little basic. But had everything to do with the fact that I couldn't figure out who my favourite Pokemon was, and so I decided that since I was born in May, and my star sign is Taurus, my favourite Pokemon should be Tauros. I don't even hold any stock in astrology, and yet that's how I made that decision. And it stayed that way for roughly 17 years. I mean, who am I to argue with that kind of logic? Before number 1, here are some honourable mentions. Scyther, Lapras, Golem, Rhydon, and Arcanine. Number 1. Beedrill. As I said before, this favourite only happened in the last 12 months because of the much mentioned Leaf Green playthrough. I've liked the design for years, but I never used it. I tended toward Butterfree, but even then never used it past level of 15. However, while it was difficult early on, Beedrill proved crucial and as a result launched itself into the top 10 and then into number 1. It's also caused a surge in affection to bug types, as you'll see in future videos. Not to mention its Mega is phenomenal, and that's why it's number 1. And there we have it, my top 10 Kanto Pokemon. But what do you think? Obviously, this was all my own opinion, and we're unlikely to agree on everything, so please leave your own top 10 Kanto Pokemon in the comments below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you like the content. But either way, thanks for watching, peace out.